By the late 8th century, shadows were beginning to fall over the great Maya lowlands. Cities that had once thrived with tens of thousands of people, places like Tikal, Copán, and Palenque, now showed the first signs of strain. Populations had swelled so quickly that farmland could no longer keep pace. Hillsides were stripped bare for maize fields, hunting grounds shrank, and rivers grew muddy from overuse. For centuries, Maya kings had celebrated their power with towering stelae carved in stone to proclaim victories and divine right. But now, those monuments grew smaller, less frequent, and at times more desperate in tone. Behind the soaring facades of temples and palaces, unrest was growing. Food was scarcer, common people toiled harder, and political stability began to falter. The Maya world still shone with magnificence, but beneath its brilliance, the foundations were weakening. These were the first cracks in an empire of time and stone, a prelude to the storms yet to come. As resources grew scarce and cities struggled to feed their people, rivalries between Maya city-states only deepened. What had once been occasional clashes now turned into cycles of near-constant warfare. Each king sought to outshine his rivals, not just by expanding territory, but by demonstrating power through conquest. Captives became the most prized trophies of battle. Defeated lords, warriors, and nobles were paraded through plazas, their fates sealed in ritual sacrifice to the gods. These grim spectacles were not only acts of devotion, but powerful political displays, meant to prove that rulers still held the favor of the divine. But endless conflict came at a cost. Armies drained manpower, harvests went untended, and resources that might have strengthened cities were consumed in war. Dynasties that once projected stability and cosmic order began to falter under the weight of bloodshed. What had been a world of dazzling cities and sacred kingship was becoming a battlefield, a stage where survival itself was now uncertain. As wars drained resources and cities pushed the land to its limits, a greater crisis struck. The climate itself began to turn against the Maya. Shifts in weather patterns brought devastating droughts across the lowlands. Rains that once fed fertile fields grew irregular and in some years failed almost entirely. The results were catastrophic. Maize, the very foundation of Maya life, withered in the fields. Crop failures spread famine through towns and villages, forcing families to abandon their homes in search of food. Hunger left populations vulnerable to disease, and unrest simmered as people questioned whether their rulers had truly kept favor with the gods. For kings who had long claimed divine authority, the drought was more than a natural disaster. It was a political one. Temples and rituals could not bring back the rains, and the inability to feed growing populations eroded royal power. What had once been a proud balance of kings, priests, and farmers was unraveling, shaken by a force far beyond human control. By the late 9th century, the unthinkable had begun. One by one, the great capitals of the southern lowlands, Tikal, Copán, Palenque, and many more, were abandoned. The very cities that had once blazed with power and ceremony now stood eerily quiet. Elites who could no longer command loyalty fled their palaces. Farmers, weary of hunger and endless war, drifted away from crowded plazas back to smaller villages or new lands. Without people to maintain them, temples and ball courts fell silent, plazas grew empty, and markets vanished. In time, the jungle began to reclaim what had been humanity's triumph. Roots pushed through stone walls, vines wrapped themselves around towering pyramids, and once great cities disappeared beneath a canopy of green. For centuries, these places had been the beating heart of Maya civilization. Now, they stood as empty monuments to a vanished order, their silence a reminder that even the mightiest cities can fall. As the great cities emptied and their temples fell silent, the royal dynasties that had ruled them for centuries began to collapse. Kings who once traced their ancestry to gods and heroes found their authority unraveling. Without thriving cities to sustain them, their power became little more than ceremony. In place of mighty rulers, smaller lords and ambitious warlords rose to prominence. Local leaders controlled fragments of territory, but they lacked the resources and prestige that once united the Maya world. The divine aura of kingship, once the foundation of political and spiritual life, was fading. The classic Maya order, built on dynasties that had endured for generations, fractured into dozens of smaller competing polities. Where once there had been grand alliances and rivalries spanning the lowlands, now there was only fragmentation. The fall of dynasties marked not just the decline of great families, but the end of an era, the unraveling of a system that had defined Maya civilization for centuries. The collapse of the great southern lowland cities did not mean the end of the Maya world. In scattered places, smaller centers endured, holding on to fragments of their former glory. Cities like Quirigua and Sable lingered as regional powers, adapting to the new realities even as the great capitals around them fell silent. Farther west and into the highlands, communities found ways to survive in harsher times. Farmers adjusted their methods, terracing hillsides and relying on diverse crops to withstand unpredictable weather. Their cities were smaller, their monuments less grand, but the heartbeat of Maya tradition continued. Trade, too, never fully disappeared. Though the great networks had fractured, goods like jade, obsidian, and cacao still moved along smaller routes, linking distant villages and towns. Rituals were kept, calendars preserved, and stories of the gods passed from one generation to the next. These survivors ensured that Maya culture, though battered, would not vanish. In the highlands and scattered cities, the embers of a great civilization still glowed. As the great cities of the southern lowlands fell into silence, the story of the Maya was far from over. In the north, new centers of power began to rise, carrying the torch of civilization into a new age. The Puuc region, with cities like Uxmal, flourished. Its elegant palaces and intricately carved facades revealed a fresh style of architecture, blending artistry with resilience. At the same time, Chichen Itza emerged as a force unlike any before. Expanding rapidly, it became not only a vast urban center, but also a place of powerful ceremony and pilgrimage. Its towering pyramids and sacred cenotes drew people from across the Maya world, making it a hub of both politics and spirituality. Though the south had declined, the north now burned brightly. Trade routes shifted, rituals adapted, and new dynasties rose to claim divine power. The Maya world was changing, but it was not ending. Instead, its energy and influence were shifting to new horizons. By the dawn of the 10th century, the age of the classic Maya had come to an end. The great southern cities, once alive with kings, ceremonies, and bustling markets, now lay abandoned beneath the jungle canopy. Their towering temples and plazas, silent and overgrown, stood as monuments to a vanished world. Yet even as the south declined, the story of the Maya was not over. In the north, cities like Uxmal and the mighty Chichen Itza flourished, blending ancient Maya traditions with new influences from beyond their lands. Their architecture, rituals, and political structures showed a civilization transforming, adapting to a changing age. The classic period had closed, but Maya culture endured. The world was entering the post-classic era, a time of reinvention where old legacies would be carried forward in new forms. The brilliance of the Maya was not lost. It had simply taken on a new shape.